I think anything that brands can do to kind of incentivize some semblance of agency amongst their consumers and show them the world outside and try and incentivize some curiosity in which books and literature and movies and parks and walks and people and drinks and whatever might be a part of that is a good thing. Now, there's probably like
Blank Street Hot Girl Walk with the book.
Okay.
Back. You're listening to the Side Projects podcast. We help marketers understand what cultural relevance actually means and requires from the people shaping media, art, and tech. Today, we are talking about the emergence of reading clubs, reading brand collabs, reading everything, and what this means in the context of the desire for analog lifestyle writ large.
I'm excited. I have to say it's good to be back in a room with two of you.
Yeah.
All together again.
Of our corporate sponsors.
Yes, and also I will say all in some iteration of a striped shirt. Mm-hmm. A lot of stripe.
It's a bit of
no
a
payment
uniform
system.
over here.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's good.
Are you reading?
I'm reading. I'm actually currently reading a book about torture.
Oh.
In the U.S. government.
Keeping it
it's
light.
called The Dark Side by Jane Mayer. I would highly recommend it.
But
it's
you know
quite
what would make that
interesting.
even better?
A
Reading it
club.
upstate with three.
In a beautiful, bucolic landscape with some of my closest strangers.
Right. A trickling stream in the back.
Yes.
Reading it out loud together.
Exactly. Man, do you guys know about Extraordinary Rendition? Fucked up. It's beautiful out, though. But Clara, I'm excited to dive in. So why don't you take us through a little bit about what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, well, as you were alluding to, I think one thing we were talking about was this reading retreat that Bloomberg covered was one of the sort of more recent examples. But I think it's something we've been tracking for a pretty long time, like
Reading.
Yeah, at least since the invention of the Gutenberg printing press. But I think the Coach mini bag book charms had sparked some conversation back in February.
Reading as performative.
Elle
Fanning did great.
The the app blocking phone device. Recently hosted another sort of like reading moment with this thing called Page Break, where it's like 15 people that are like silently gathered to read a book one page at a time together. Read a book out loud together.
The point is you go together with this group, you pay like $1,000 for this kind of retreat wherever they happen to have it. There's different locations, but it's a programmed event where the wine is flowing and everyone reads together the book out loud. No one is left. What left behind? What's that saying?
Soldier?
No man
no
or woman.
No reader left behind. And then, I don't know, I feel like we talked about the bookish influencer, which is kind of part of like, I guess, a wider thing around like different types of influencers outside of like social sort of starting to have their own moment. And then, I don't know, not the New York Times Magazine, T Magazine, often confused for each other. They recently did a special on how to be cultured. And, maybe the one guy in the world who's not trying to performatively read, Barry Keoghan, if I'm saying that correctly, boldly said that he doesn't read novels. And in fact, he's never read a novel.
Couldn't tell by looking at his face.
Oh my God.
I feel like
God.
No, I love this topic because I think there's so much interest around how to be analog that it's sort of this last kind of space that has not been commodified as such, where you can literally buy into the culture of performative reading with a group of like-minded individuals. And I take that more as like a curiosity than a judgment. Like, I do think that at the end of a long work day, you're kind of brain fried. A lot of times you want to shut off and kind of scroll through your phone or whatever. And so I do think that what previously was seen as these sort of like leisure moments, especially in this Bloomberg article, as it kind of talks through all these different reading clubs and reading retreats as they're springing up, is like the history of it was oftentimes women would be like group reading together while they were sewing or, reading by the fire after a day of something. And so it's
a day of whatever women do.
Whatever those women are
What
doing.
is it y'all do again?
But I do think that it was, you know, a long time group activity. And then it was talking about during the pandemic, you know, people went remote and a lot of reading happened during the commute on the subway, you know, and it was not rare to see people crack open a book as they're riding the subway. And so there isn't really a place, I guess, because no one reads in private anymore. I think it was like 16% of Americans read.
Who's answering that survey question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the ones who can read, I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I don't know. I just think like is it needed? Perhaps. Like, are we at an all-time low of literacy? Absolutely. Is everything questionably AI? Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there's like a strange capitalistic nightmare creeping upon us where you have to like pay to opt in to do something that you could easily just do in private if you organized it yourself and were like a bit disciplined.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think, well, you've already answered the first question I was going to ask you, which is good. But like, I feel similarly that I feel mixed because I feel like oftentimes on this podcast and both current and former iterations of it, I feel like we've discussed wanting for people to be off of their phones and that like way too much of culture is happening like on devices and that's the place that people are looking for it. And so I feel like on one hand, slightly hypocritical being like, well, not that way. Like, don't read that way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you should be reading in this correct way that I have in my mind. But I think to your point, though, I do think that there's still like an ick factor around this. And I do think that it comes through in the way of like analog is even all of these sort of trends around like the analog bag and all of that, like it's still something that's being like hugely commodified, but then also is like something that has failed to actually happen offline.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like if analog was happening, we wouldn't hear about it all the fucking time.
Well, yeah. One thing I think
It's
that
like-
I'm struggling with, and to kind of add to what you're saying, is like oftentimes I am grossed out by when a brand comes into a space to try and like foment community.
Fomenting community.
You know, where it's
Yeah.
like Heineken is getting people off their phones with these devices
Yeah.
that flip your phone over whenever you cheers, you know, whatever they're doing. But in this case, it's these genuinely like passionate individuals who are trying to gather a community of people who want to read with them and discuss stuff, which is hashtag good. But
Are we bringing hashtags back?
well, you know, I'm trying to like, whereas that to me feels like VC startup corny in a way that the Mew Mew Literary Club hashtag brand, I find that to be like genuinely fascinating that they have managed to kind of create this culture around like the Dua Lipification of reading and, you know, gathering together like genuine voices in the literati.
I guess to go into that, do you think the difference with the Mew Mew thing is that it feels more like, for lack of a better term, authentic to them versus like, I think maybe with some of these other, like when I guess in the moments like it seems like you're talking about when like maybe an organic community thing is then like co-opted essentially by a brand. Is it about like the authenticity of the brand even having a book club?
Well,
Is
I
that what
sent
you're
this to
speaking
you guys on Slack, but like the guy who started Page Break, and I'm sure he's great, really nice guy, said something about like the KPIs of my retreat are for people to find friendship. And it's like, who are you to like, what are you talking about? KPIs of your book retreat?
I mean, I think that also just goes to the fact, like, do you guys remember we talked about this forever ago, but like the laundrette thing that existed, or like Eli sent to me, there's like a Rummy Cube community that has like a brand deck that they're sending out to like try to get potential partners. But I feel like it, to me, to make a book metaphor is sort of the example of somebody writing a book with the idea in mind of like getting a screenplay or getting an adaptation versus like somebody that actually wants to create a community.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is a person who is essentially creating this to like court a deal. They're not like creating this out of an actual community
desire. There seems to be, to me, this like undercurrent of people who are genuinely passionate about something, but who have like a liquidity event in mind.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, I want to create this retreat that I can eventually like package up and sell to a brand partnership or to, I don't know, create into like a members only club or whatever. And I'm not sure if that's the point of any of these people. Maybe they're all really just wanting to go to Wales and like experience the sea salt air, or like with their Colin Hoover or whatever Colin Hoover book. But like, I think that is sort of what these conversations are like. Why are you doing press for your book retreat?
Yeah.
When it's like a week old, you know?
I feel like what it gets to though is this kind of like, and maybe it's just slowly, it's starting in this like small pocket and seeping out, is this like growing skepticism and cynicism that I think is going into the gen pop, that like everything is performative, everything is marketing, either for your personal brand or an actual brand. And you see it with like the geese psyop discourse, or like, I don't know, at this point it might be a little old, but like there's a bunch of videos going, like side talk videos of Knicks fans outside of Madison Square Garden after like Knicks games, and all of the like quote tweets are like, this is like the most performative fandom of all time. And like, whether it's true or not, I think it speaks to like how adept people are getting at kind of like clocking advertising and clocking marketing, for better or for worse. But also that like when people see anything as like a branding opportunity, it's really unfortunate, because then it's like really hard to discern what is like a genuine thing. And I think we can all agree that it's like a net positive that people are like respecting the written word again. But there's like something off about it when everyone is kind of like looking for an exit, looking for a deal with like the organic female-owned mezcal brand to come sponsor their Rummy Cube night. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But I think it's just like, and that just might be the world that we live in now. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my take on it. But I don't think that there's like no room for an authentic connection for a brand to like, you know, do reading.
Right. It just like calls back to The Wing.
I was gonna say maybe it's from reading Famesick, but I had Audrey Gelman on my mind with all of this.
Where it's like, I think that they're, you know, perhaps not at the forefront, but there's like an undercurrent of villainy.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, I'm sure there is this passion there, but then why are you pricing your retreat at $1,000 for a weekend? You know, like, is that really for the community, or are you trying to make this like your full-time job?
I mean, I guess it depends. Is your community kind of like Cobble Hill moms? Then maybe,
right, yeah.
Maybe Stetson House is perfect for that. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I guess to the point about like how brands are relating to all of this, I do think it's a tie-in with this emerging talent consultancy called Figures, which is basically trying to make a name for itself by connecting brands with alternatively influential figures. So people that are not necessarily social media influencers, but nevertheless like have sway in other ways. Like maybe they edit a magazine, or maybe they host a reading retreat for $1,000. But I think that the fact that Figures exists, I think kind of solidifies to me that there is sort of like, I don't know, a imagined or real business need that brands are sort of starting to think about in terms of like, what is the value of analog or like offline influence. But I kind of wonder, to your point, like if all roads are sort of leading to Rome anyway already. Do you know what I mean? Like even these people that are sort of positioning themselves as being analog are still sort of relying on the same people that are already online and trying to get off. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like there's no real off ramp is like what this is starting to feel like to me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I agree with what you're saying. And I think that because the creator economy is sort of the one way that still will not go away for marketing things. And I think a lot of brands are kind of niching down in terms of like, we no longer need a huge creator to build awareness. We want to have credibility in these smaller pocket communities that can then reverberate outwards. Like it's kind of a volume strategy versus like a whatever else would have been before. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's like people are looking for individuals that have a real point of view other than like what the correct shade of like highlighter is.
But what does that mean?
What do you mean? I think it's someone who has a real perspective, a real opinion on the world or on the topic at hand that does not immediately need to boil down or be legible to a consumer product or a consumer good. I think it's trying to shift your perspective on something I don't know that, because I think there is immense value, and I think there's a desire for immense value that is going beyond like, here's my affiliate link, here's like 6 ways to style my Onitsuka Tiger shoes.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think like my counterpoint to that is like, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think that, I think everybody would say they have a point of view. Like,
Yeah, they would say that. But
right.
like,
No, but I think like, how do you discern somebody who's got a point of view about their like new app that's going to get you to the front of the restaurant line or something versus like somebody genuinely trying to do something that's
you're
like,
saying like, how do you value certain people's point of views in terms of like,
well, you're like,
like
it's
a
got to have
hierarchy?
yeah, like it's got to have a point of view. Okay.
Right. So some
But,
people
like,
have a point of view about like, here's why I wake up at 4 a.m. and I take off my like mouth tape and I go on a run and I eat my like honey peanut butter
I just
sandwich.
mean like, you know, any brand deck will have like, we need a discernible point of view,
Right.
or like creators will have a point of view on
Yeah.
blah, blah. And it's like, none of this means anything.
Well, I guess to that end, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Eli, but like, are there people or like
Name one.
Like, well, no, not like gonna name one
Shit.
person, but like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Who's got a point of view?
who are the people that you think are like genuinely doing that, or if you do think there are people that are doing that?
I do. You're gonna clown my ass for saying it though. It really has nothing to do with like the brand
Okay,
landscape. I'm
so
talking about
let's-
like the Kyla Scanlons of the world, who have a perspective on the economy, who have a perspective on Gen Z, for example. And to some extent, I understand that these are like like people in like the strategy
In the strategy
world.
space.
In the strategy space.
In the Ezra Klein
But what
network.
about like
Whose jobs to have a point of view.
the woman who runs Climax Books, for example, like starting a store with a specific perspective on what type of literature she might want, why it might be relevant in a current brand context. Like, that's kind of what I mean. I understand that like
Yeah.
everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I guess to go back and like, this isn't necessarily to argue it, but just to say like these things are like very much in bed together. Like, I think that the reason for like the success of Climax Books and also for Kyla's success, and this is again in no way to knock them, but is like they have a certain amount of like digital literacy. Do you know what I mean? Like, they understand how to grow an audience, how to build a network and all of that stuff. And I think that that is similar with these reading clubs. Is sort of like, in order for anyone to go to your reading club, how do you get the word out? You turn to social. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of the web, or sort of like the logical trap that I think is interesting about this, in terms of like thinking about the analog movement more broadly, and like, how does it take off and how does it expand? Is that like, I think in order for these things to gain traction, they need to have awareness,
Right.
which the only way to build awareness at the scale you need it is on social, and they need money. And the only way to do that is through brand deals, basically. So I think it's sort of like, how do you achieve a different kind of creative landscape outside of those things? And I think that that's a really interesting trap for everyone.
Yeah. But I think the
honestly.
point of the alternatively influential article and the point of Figures is that they're working with people who didn't start what they do with the end goal of a brand exit, which I
Yeah.
think is a differentiator from maybe what we're talking about. And I know we don't necessarily know these book heads directly, whereas like them and the Rummy Cubes of the world and the like Bible study club might have started it with the sole intention of getting a niche olive oil brand deal out of it or whatever. And I think that might be the differentiator, because I don't know how you scale to any extent, whether it's from trying to get a brand deal or just trying to gain like a organic audience and parlay that into speaking gigs and a book deal or whatever, which I think is normal, without kind of playing the game of
Yeah.
like digital literacy. Like I just don't know that you can do that. But I think the differentiator is like, do I want to do this to get like the brand and the marketing deals, or do I want to do it just so I can better fund my own I don't know, academic or intellectual journeys and get my own point of view out there?
I think though the landscape that you kind of laid out, which is like you have to do all of these things, is the result of that is all of these analog things being commodified, because there's, you know, very few ways or very few things left that have not become like a purchasable event or like a consumerist pursuit. So we're kind of now in this situation because of all of the, things you pointed to, where even though we want these things to happen organically, like we would love for people to start book clubs or the library to be open more days or whatever, the reality is that most people are hearing this conversation and instead seeing an opportunity to like fill the white space with a thought leadership book retreat that, goes you to like takes you to the Catskills or whatever. And I think that's where I struggle, because it's like you're missing the message a little bit.
So what would a good kind of, to maybe round this out, what would a good kind of like brand integration look like? I'm kind of asking maybe a question that you have, but like the rubric of kind of like legitimate, authentic, for lack of a better word, brand activation versus one that might be like more expedient and extractive. Is it about like the specificity involved? Like if it's a reading club, that the book is really both like interesting and novel and is something that like only this, like the faux meat brand doing tender is the flesh or whatever? Or is it more, I don't know.
I have a good example.
I don't think it's like a bad thing that brands necessarily are doing this, but I think it just go ahead.
I have a really good example, which is now RIP, not here with us anymore, but The Happy Reader, which was like a publication that was put out, I think, quarterly. It was a collaboration between Penguin Random House and Fantastic Man. And it was like a kind of zine almost, but you could purchase it. And each issue would feature one Penguin Random House classic. And inside would be editorial. Like every cover was like a celebrity cover. So it was like, Grimes or Aziz Ansari or something would like take you through their favorite books, and it was all just like book themed. So it was like a really interesting way for a celebrity to kind of talk about something that you never hear from them about usually, which is like what's on their bookshelf or what books did they read growing up or whatever. But it also served to promote whatever Penguin Random House classic they wanted to promote, which was often like Wuthering Heights or, some old thing that would be like, yes, you should have read this anyways. But that to me felt like organic. It was a great extension of the brand, and it created its own kind of like outward effect. Plus it was in line with what Penguin wanted to achieve anyways. Like it's not X brand trying to infiltrate like Y community, So that's, I think, also why Climax Books works really well. It's like it's such a kind of closed loop ecosystem that like she has a very discerning vision for what kind of Climax customer she wants. It naturally attracts these like really interesting, cool people into the shop to become like shop girls or whatever. So there's just like, I think the success of that is all down to Isabella's, choice to not expand it in the wrong ways. Like it's her putting her own like horse blinders on.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are both really good examples. I think the hard part to me feels like when and maybe this is what you're talking about of like, what you're talking about of like, if you have like a pretend meat, like a meat alternative company, and they're like, what is our way into analog? Like, I think it's sort of like with anything is like, I think that company is also like, oh, what is our way into TikTok and all these other things. And I think like the same principle applies is like, I think that what we've been talking about with individuals is like the intentionality matters and like why you're doing it matters. And I think that right now a lot of brands are doing things that are analog, not necessarily in the spirit of connection or being offline, but in the spirit of dollars and cents and taking advantage of a moment. And I think that what we're basically saying is that I think that just chafes a lot more because of the precise thing that is trending is the idea of being away from brands and away from social media. So I think that the tension is inherent. honestly, I don't know that I think like, yes, there is a way for brands to be part of it, but I think that it reflects and requires a type of self-awareness that I don't know that most brands have been able to demonstrate even in an easier context, like a TikTok strategy.
Yeah.
So I honestly don't know. Like, I think that the answer is to maybe think about it,
Read a book.
and to actually read a book, because I think that what's happening now is a lot of people want to quote unquote do analog and don't don't walk the walk.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that is a big problem, to be honest.
Dylan,
but I don't know what
remember what we talked.
What do you think,
Remember what we
Eli?
spoke about? Dylan, tone. Take 5 seconds.
Dylan,
Breathe.
crack your picture
Breathe.
book.
Breathe and think about it.
What do you think?
What was the question again?
No, the question is your question of like, what do you think brands should be doing? I'm saying that I think that they should take a mindful pause and think about like if
A
what,
retreat.
yeah, maybe take a retreat
mental
They should
retreat.
do
and crack
box
a book.
breathing.
I think box breathing is a good idea too.
Box breathing with Dropbox.
But
Free idea. I mean, no, I think that is correct. I think anything that and it depends on the brand, but I think anything that brands can do to kind of incentivize some semblance of agency amongst their consumers and show them the world outside and try and incentivize some curiosity in which books and literature and movies and parks and walks and people and drinks and whatever might be a part of that is a good thing. Now, there's probably like
Blank Street Hot Girl Walk with the book.
Okay. But that to me is like born out of like brain rot TikTok, like clock it, clock my walk.
Oh my God.
I don't know, which I think just might. Yeah.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're getting at, but I think
which is
that
like what brand would ever do that, because the purpose is that
no, but
they
I guess
want you
what
to
I'm
buy their
saying is
product.
I think that the fact that analog is trending is in a weird way really interesting. Do you know what because I think that it is sort of putting a finger on this sort of like very fundamental hypocrisy about the way that brands relate to people on social media, is that they are looking on social media, noticing that analog is trending, which is a contradiction in terms, and then being like, how do we get on this in a way that is going to make our social trend? Do you know what I mean? And so you're sort of like, I think it's a really hard thing to talk about in like well, if what's really happening here is that people want to have a much more like or they're sort of having a complicated relationship already with their devices and with social media and want to get away from that. That also sort of constitutes like a broader strategic shift around like, okay, so if like we're saying that we want to go analog, what does that mean for our TikTok strategy? What does that mean for like our Instagram strategy?
Right.
Do you know
Shut
what I mean?
off.
It's like, I think that it just requires answering many more complicated questions about like the way that brands have spent their time over the past like 6 years, even since the advent of TikTok. And I think that
Oh no,
and I just think that it'll be interesting to see whether if this does become more than just like a fun trend, and I do personally think it is. I just think that it's going to require a lot more than brands doing a fun reading activation. I think that it's sort of like a more existential thing than I think a lot of brands are treating it as, if that makes sense.
Trey, close this out. It's hotter than a Substack sauna read in here.
No, I was just gonna say I opened my mailbox yesterday and I got a Land's End catalog, and the front cover said, "Get ready for analog summer."
Oh, hell no.
And I was like, I guess it's a physical catalog. I got to give it to them for that.
Yeah.
All right. I guess maybe on as recline mode, why don't we close out with our favorite books going into the summer or spring?
Book boys. All right.
I really wanted to double click into that. I'll recommend what I recode up top. It's called The Dark Side by Jane Mayer, and it's about how Americans lost its way following 9/11. They unleashed the shackles of petty international law and habeas corpus and due process and all of that. And aren't we in a much better spot now? But Jane Mayer, she's great. New Yorker. Over to you. Hopefully with something brighter.
Oh, man. I mean, I feel like I was going to say Famesick by Lena Dunham, but I feel like everyone is saying that.
We've read it in every Substack.
Every Substack. I think, I won't say that though. I've been reading or working my way through the On the Calculation of Volume series, which is really interesting. It's just a woman that's living the same day over and over. And her phone dies. So now she's officially offline in the book.
Now she's doing analog.
Now she's doing analog Groundhog's Day. So allow that to be inspiration on your summer reading.
I'm going to recommend not a book, but I'm just excited about. I bought a Walkman.
Ooh.
It's coming in the mail.
Did you buy some CDs or tapes?
I bought
for
some
it?
tapes. So I went to this like vinyl shop in the West Village or something, thinking they'd have like a great cassette selection. Cassettes are not in, but they're not trending, by the way. They had like 10 and they were all classical. So I got 2. Very excited for my Rachmaninoff.
Okay, Philip.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So we'll be listening to some classical music.
Rachmaninoff off.
And with that, we'll see you at the next book retreat.
All right.
Bye.